Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our regular council meeting for April 18th, 2022. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional territories and the oral practices of the Blackfoot Nation, which include the Siksika, the Kainai, and the Piikani. We also acknowledge the Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda First Nations, the Métis Nation Region 3, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of southern Alberta. We're making this acknowledgement to demonstrate our continuing efforts to work together as we strive for reconciliation through increased and collective learning. I'd like to call this meeting to order and moved by Councillor Jessica that the agenda be adopted as amended by adding agenda item 7.I, Chamber of Commerce request for reduction in rental fees for the 2022 trade show, by adding agenda item 7J, Newell Integrated Child Care Society request for additional storage space, and deleting agenda items 10.B and 10.C. All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Councillor Nesbitt that the minutes from the regular council meeting held April 4th, 2022 be approved. Any errors or omissions? Any questions? All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Councillor Prentice that the March 2022 RCMP report be accepted as information. Staff Sergeant Yetman.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Can everybody hear me okay?
Try again.
Oh, just wondering if everybody can hear me.
Yeah, we can, yeah.
Oh, perfect. Okay, good afternoon. I hope everybody had a enjoyable holiday weekend there. So I'm here before council today to present my report for my April report. So it'll be covering the month of March 2022 for Brooks Municipal Detachment. So in in March of 2022, Brooks Detachment members responded to a total of 349 municipal calls for service. A total of 30 prisoners were lodged in detachment cells. Now, that number was up significantly. I believe the month before, we only had 8 prisoners that were lodged in cells. So the month of March actually saw our prisoner counts go up quite a bit. There were 89 municipal criminal record checks completed, and we had a total of 39 violation tickets that were issued within the city of Brooks. The month of March was a fairly busy month for us, all things considered. I've picked out 3 files that I feel represent the month of March fairly well. So the first one, and I have to explain that this is actually a county file, but I just want to show kind of the connections between city and county, because this is one where the arrest of this subject actually had, ramifications across both city and county. So on March 2nd, 2022, Brooks RCMP received a complaint that a vehicle had been stolen from a Good Samaritan when they stopped to assist a driver and passenger involved in a single vehicle collision. The Good Samaritan suffered minor injuries, and the 2 suspects were believed to be suffering from significant injuries. Investigation revealed that the suspects had previously stolen the vehicle that they had crashed before stealing the second vehicle, the one belonging to the Good Samaritan. It was also learned that the male and female suspects had been involved in a domestic violence altercation during their crime spree. The female suspect was located that same day, and the male suspect was located several days later after trying to evade arrest. The male suspect was apprehended by members of the Medicine Hat Alert, as well as Brooks Detachment members. The male was determined to be suffering from serious injuries as a result of the initial collision that had occurred several days previous, and was treated in hospital prior to being remanded into custody. Both the male and female suspects were charged with numerous offenses, including robbery, possession of stolen property, and assault. And the ties to the city The suspect, male suspect, actually has a property here in the city in which some firearms were located, I do believe. So the next one that I have for you is on March 17th, 2022. This is an example of a fairly unlucky person. Brooks RCMP members were called to conduct a welfare check on a male. When they arrived to conduct the welfare check, they discovered the male to be in possession of prohibited weapons, namely 2 stun guns and a pair of nunchucks. I don't know if anybody knows what nunchucks are, but they're the Japanese style. It's like a fighting stick, 2 sticks joined with a chain. They're actually prohibited. At the time of the welfare check, unfortunately, the male was bound by an order of prohibition of possession of firearms, ammunition, or explosive substances. The male was charged with several offenses, including unauthorized possession of firearm, prohibited or restricted device, weapon possession contrary to order and to an order, and possession of a weapon for a dangerous purpose. On March 26, Brooks RCMP responded to a complaint of 2 vehicles driving erratically within the city of Brooks. Further investigation revealed that the complainant's vehicle had been shot at by what was believed to be a handgun. It was determined that an altercation had occurred at a local establishment that led to one vehicle chasing the other. Investigation confirmed that a handgun had been used to shoot the complainant's vehicle. RCMP Forensic Identification Services out of Lethbridge assisted Brooks members, and that investigation is ongoing. Staffing situation currently, we have a new member that arrived at our detachment from depot at the end of March, and he's replacing a member that left us in early April. Our new corporal supervisors are going to be starting in, I do believe, they'll probably both be starting in May. And at the latest, the second one will be joining us in June. Are there any questions on that before I discuss the stats?
No, go ahead.
Okay, if there's no questions, we'll just have a quick look at the municipal crime gauge here. And so for the period of January to March, so basically the quarter, which would be our 4th quarter. So 2022 versus 2021, what we saw was an 11% increase in persons crime. That's things such as uttering threats, criminal harassment, assaults, etc. We also saw a 23% increase in property crime. That would be thefts of motor vehicle, theft from motor vehicle, general thefts over and under $5,000. We also saw a 50% decrease in other criminal code, and that would be things like weapons offenses, as well as people failing to comply with court-ordered conditions and whatnot. So our total criminal code offenses for the 4th quarter, so compared to last year, showed a 2% decrease. When we look at selected property crimes, break and enters, we had 5 fewer offenses or 5 fewer instances. So that's down somewhat when you look at that individually. Theft of motor vehicle, we had 9 more instances, and we saw a 6% increase in theft under 5,000. So 2 more instances there. Just a couple of the trends that we're looking at, and I'm just working off of a second computer here, so please bear with me. So some of the things that we're seeing right now as far as the stats go, as I mentioned to council at the last meeting, thefts of motor vehicle are still an issue within the city. We've seen some increases there. We have some other issues include, we have theft of bicycle and a couple of instances of theft of mail. Well-being checks have gone up. That's not necessarily something we have control over. They're usually requested by third party. And then just some speed-related offenses. seem to be presenting a bit of an issue with the stats there. Are there any questions?
Any questions on those stats there? No, no questions. Oh, Councillor Prentice.
Yeah, just wondering on all this theft and stuff, have you been having problems with gas tanks being broken, draining here as well as everywhere else in the country, or is that not a problem here yet?
Actually, we haven't really seen a whole lot of that. That was something that once the gas prices started rising, I thought we were going to be seeing a bit of an uptick in, but touch wood, we haven't seen an increase in that as of yet. So I hope things stay that way.
Oh, Councillor Jessica.
Yeah, hello, Staff Sergeant. So we've spoken before. There's so much I can say. I don't know where to start. But since last summer, we've been experiencing an ever-increasing wave of graffiti and posting of obscure or obscene or abusive signs around the city of Brooks. It has been brought up here at council a couple of times, and all that came out of the discussion were reasons why nothing would be or could be done. And a big part of that was, at least the impression I got, was the feeling that it was not a serious matter. I guess I beg to differ. So some of the messages that are being posted there on signs and on these stickers are things like, Illuminati, power that be, white man will die for the rat juice, rat hole, beast families. Illuminati, power that be, rapist face, dirt rat juice, beast white man. Illuminati, power that be, dirt rat juice, mad rapist face, beast white man. Illuminati, white American cow mothers died with a black blank up their blank. Illuminati, power that be, white man equals child pornography. Power that be, rapist face, rat demon white man. And this has been constant. A big reason there hasn't been more of this seen is there are individuals, and one in particular, that have been going behind this person, one person possibly with one or two helpers, and taking these down as fast as they put them up. So the problem is more severe than most people are aware. The other thing that's happening is there's becoming more and more graffiti putting on buildings. It's being painted over, and then it's being put right back on again. It's happening on public property, city property, private property, and it's becoming an epidemic. I was walking this morning at 9 o'clock, and there was a nice new one on a sign, one block east of the JBS Center, and the paint was still wet. So one of the questions is just, what kind of a super criminal are we dealing with? So I went out with my friend a week ago, and we know where he lives, and we were watching for him from 2:30 in the morning till 6 in the morning. Picked him up at 5 o'clock over by the JBS Center. From there he headed north. I saw him slapping one of his signs up on a traffic sign there, just by the tennis courts, and then followed him back to his residence. So he's not the invisible man. And I've also taken the trouble of looking at the criminal code. And under mischief, section 430, article 1, everyone who commits mischief willfully destroys or damages property. I think that applies. Another article, 434.1, mischief relating to religious property, educational institutions, etc. Everyone who commits mischief in relation to property described in any paragraphs, if the commission of the mischief is motivated by bias, prejudice, or hate-based or on color, race, religion, national or ethnic origin, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, or mental or physical disability, is guilty of an indictable offense. And if you go in the definition of property, it includes a building or structure or part of a structure that's primarily used as an educational institution, including a school, daycare center, college, or university, or an object associated with that institution located in or on the grounds of such a building or structure. If you go to the Composite High School and look at the parking bollards, same messages are all there. Eastbrook Elementary is close to his point of origin and is a continuous target. They even in the morning sometimes have to come and scrape his stickers off the bus parking signs. And then I looked for something specifically on parking signage, because he is putting these things on parking signs and obscuring them, and I didn't find anything in the criminal code, but I would think that that would be an issue as well. So this has been going on long enough, it's getting worse, and I hope that my fellow councilors, I'm pretty sure my fellow councilors agree with me, it's something really needs to be done about this. This is getting to be a disgrace and a blot on the City of Brooks and on the performance of the RCMP.
So if I may, maybe I'll start asking the questions. And I'd like for everybody to think back, because I've spoken with council on so many occasions about this, but is anybody able to quote a time where I said that we either can't or won't do anything about the graffiti problem? You don't have to answer that question, but I think everybody sitting around the table knows that I never said that once.
One quote from one of the officers was that they have to triage and choose the things that are a priority, or to paraphrase it slightly.
Correct.
The police, my friend was given a number to call, and he did call, and he wound up going through dispatch, and this was at night, and he had a particular name, and nobody called him back.
Okay.
It's been more than a month since he's spoken to the police officer, and several months ago, I did tell you yourself that I do know someone that knows this fellow's habits. I did go around with him, and I followed the perpetrator has a primary route that he follows that he branches off of, depending on the circumstances. So it's not going to be rocket science. And the impression I got was, or what I understood was, to stop him, he had to be caught in the act. But in Calgary, they had 3 little signs that said something about, one about stop having white babies and everything else, and it was in the Herald as hate motive by aggravated crime. And here, under the criminal code, this fellow is breaking 2 or 3 laws, and including, I think could very well be argued that this is a hate crime. If it isn't, it should be, and nothing has happened. And
no, and
I've been within 6 feet of him, and he's
okay.
He looks probably, some people would argue he looks more normal than I do, and maybe they're right.
Right.
But,
so, can I ask one more question, sir?
Of course.
So when you and your friend followed this gentleman for approximately 3.5 to 4 hours, did you witness him putting up any signs or spray painting any buildings?
I did see him putting up a sticker on one of the signs.
Did you call us?
We only were able to follow him for an hour.
Did you call us?
I had astronomical binoculars and infrared binoculars as well.
Did you call the police?
The camera, but it wasn't good enough. You need some specialized equipment to get anything at that.
For sure.
If I saw him, if I can't get the evidence, I'm not qualified, trained, or I hope expected to be to grab him. He's about 6 foot tall, 250 pounds, and quite a bit younger than me.
Okay, so again, though, so you followed him, and you said you saw him put up one, or you saw him spray paint something?
No, what he's been doing lately is taking these signs.
Right.
He puts some glue on the back, and then you can just walk along and just slap them on as he walks by.
Did you call the police? When you witnessed him do that, did you call the police?
No, I didn't.
Why not?
Because I thought it'd be a waste of time.
No. If there's one thing that I cannot stress enough, we need people to tell us when this is happening. We have our own investigation going on into this, and I can talk about it until I'm blue in the face. I have sat down with council. I have let you know what is actually going on as far as I can. We are actively working on it. Now, I think comments like this, there is a perception out there, especially on social media, that the RCMP are doing nothing. And unfortunately, exchanges like this, I think they feed into that. We are working on this. We are taking it very seriously. For the people of the City of Brooks, we are working on this, and we do take this seriously. We are alive to the fact that there are elements of hate speech, that even fall beyond simple mischief, that we're looking into as well. So, I mean, this is definitely not a case that we are not doing anything. We're looking at this from a point of view that we don't want the suspect to go in and get a slap on the wrist, because if he's released from court, he's going to come back out, and that same night he's potentially going to start doing it again. So we have to do something meaningful here. And unfortunately, something meaningful takes time. And that's exactly what we're doing.
I guess one other observation I had that evening was a little bit more traffic than I expected through most of the evening. And when we spoke earlier, I believe it was said that there would be, or it was asked for an increase in police presence in the areas being affected. I didn't see one solitary. I saw a police car. I saw Domino's, pizza truck vans, and quite a few people after 5 o'clock. A lot of people going to work, probably at the plant. But the police department was conspicuous by their absence. And again, my friend, whose name and number I have given to the police and who's never been contacted, has. I asked him directly, well, have you been seeing the police or anybody around here? So if they are there, they're hiding really well. But if they're hiding really well, unless they're always in the wrong place, they should be able to catch this guy, because he comes back to the same place a day or two after it's painted over. His range is not that big. I'm hoping to see some results.
Yeah, so the next time you watch him commit a crime, please give us a call.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Idris?
Just a quick question, and I hope I'm not getting into investigation techniques that you can't talk about. How about without charge? How bringing him in for questioning? Is it easy to bring someone in for questioning and maybe even repeating it multiple times, and so that some sort of a fear or something that could happen?
Yeah, and I mean, that's quite possible. We are currently pursuing another investigative technique right now that doesn't involve having to require a confession from anybody.
Okay,
I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Councillor Jessica?
Thank you.
Did you have one more question?
Yeah, just the other thing, earlier when we were talking about him having to be caught in the act, specifically so far as the graffiti. But if you look at the handwriting and the messages on the graffiti and on the papers, it may be a little bit more challenging to catch him on the graffiti, but there should be no trouble catching him on this. I've got a picture here by the high school where he's pasted 5 signs on the back of one of the parking lot signs at the school. Get him on this and nail him on that.
Assuming it's the same person doing both, sir.
Well, I guess the police have people that can do handwriting analysis, and if he's not, they can act one way, and if it is the same person, then that gives them an extra option.
Yeah, so I would encourage the people of Brooks to be part of the solution here. More often than not, I've seen instances where people are just simply going straight to social media to post this, and to be quite honest, it's useless. The people need to pick up the phone. They need to phone us. We have members working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Are we busy with a multitude of things? Yes, we are, as the 3 files that I presented at the beginning of the meeting here would adequately show. We've dealt with, in the month of March, we've dealt with the shooting. 2 vehicles, 1 vehicle shooting another vehicle. Substantial property crime. So we are dealing with a lot of different things. We are taking this very seriously. And if the public sees anybody doing this, or if they see any fresh graffiti or signs that have been put up, call us right away so we can get out there and have a look at it. And, that's our best chance really of catching somebody.
Okay, Councillor Nesbitt.
Yes, Staff Sergeant. He came and painted on the side of the Brooks Bulletin one night, and a week later, I went and painted over it, and the next day he put another one right beside the one I just painted. And I painted that over again. And then I was watching, not at 3 in the morning, but that's when he went down the alley and did the other buildings. And they're trying to cover that up, and he keeps coming back and going over it again. So I almost started to stake out where you're buying spray paint, because that's what he's using. And he's very good at it. The latest one was the apartment building down my street last Friday night, and it's perfectly aligned. His printing is perfect. But it's costing these guys a fortune. It's on brick. You can't spray that off. It's going to cost them a lot of money. And he's just coming closer and closer, and it's frustrating.
Yeah. It is very frustrating. And I mean, we are as frustrated as anybody else. You know, one of my things is I am doing, you know, as much as I can as a detachment commander here to basically foster trust between the people and the RCMP in the city. And I mean, realistically, I mean, you don't have to tell me that it makes the RCMP look bad that we haven't caught the guy yet. That being said, to say that we're not doing anything, that would be absolutely false at this point. We are doing actually quite a few things, you know, up to and including looking into where products come from, perhaps, you know, and that's really, you know, all I want to get into. You know, when I say we're investigating it, I'm kind of asking you to take me at face value and take me at my word when I say that we are investigating it. This is not something that's being left by the wayside.
Councillor Goodenough.
I'm not sure if you can answer this, but or maybe someone in administration can. Is there a point where we come to where we have to start to look at a cost at this? We have a lot of city property, public property, city buildings that have been graffitied. And when do we start to come up with a figure of how much this is going to cost the taxpayers of Brooks?
So I can only speak to my piece on this, and I can't actually speak for the city in terms of the cost to the taxpayers and whatnot. What I will tell you is, I mean, I do think it's a good idea to start tabulating the cost of the damages, because, you know, if we find ourselves at a point here in the future where we're sitting in a courtroom, certainly, you know, restitution will be one thing that may be sought, right, or that will be considered. So, and again, I can make no guarantees as to how that would even turn out, but I mean, we would, it would be very beneficial to know certainly the cost of the damages around the city.
One more question here. Okay.
Yeah, for future reference, you were saying I should have contacted the police. I did try to take a picture at the time, but my equipment was not good enough in those light conditions to get more than a blur. What would have happened if I had contacted the police? I would have phoned Red Deer. They would have tried to track somebody down at the station. In the meantime, this fellow is heading for home. It's dark. If I try to follow him, he might see. How should I have reacted other than making the phone call? And if I had to make a phone call, what would have happened?
So based on what you told me earlier, I mean, it certainly sounds like you and your friend watched the person commit the offense. Even if you had followed him back to his house and phoned us, I mean, regardless of where the phones get answered from, we're going to get the call. Like we'll get the call in a relatively short period of time. I mean, the only obstacle to us getting there quickly would be if we're tied up on something else. And I mean, we would try and break somebody away quickly, you know, and if you saw him commit the crime and then walk back into his house and you could tell us he went into a certain residence, we have avenues of investigation from there.
Okay. Staff Sergeant Yetman, thank you for your time this afternoon.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a good afternoon. Okay, to the motion there, moved by Councillor Prentice that the March 2022 RCMP report be accepted as information. All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Councillor Wardrop that the following items of correspondence be received as information, updates on council conferences or workshops, the accounts payable listing, and report to council on the COVID-19 update. And we'll start with Councillor Idris. Anything to report?
Thank you, Mayor. I was recently invited by the president of the student council in Brooks Composite High School and in his council, and they are here with us today, the president, Mr. Abdi Dawi, and Miss Hikma Musa, who is the vice president of the student council. I had a very, very productive meeting with them. I actually felt the question there was a little bit harder than sometimes the questions here. I want to applaud them on the work that they are doing, and I want to applaud their counselor, Joseph Octavius, who works with them. They also told me recently about an event they had at the school celebrating cultures, and there was a lot to celebrate in Brooks. As the diversity is the strength that we always talk about. They in the school actually show that and represent that. So on behalf of council, I would like to thank them. I actually invited them to come and see our council. As I said, I saw theirs. So thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for joining us today there. Okay, Councilor Nesbitt, anything to report?
No, Your Honor, nothing to report.
Okay, Councilor Prentice? Councilor Goodenough?
Nothing to report.
Councilor Jessica?
EcoBrooks has been working with parks on the edible garden for the south end of Stafford Lake. So they've started a public information campaign and are putting up some signage and having some EcoBrooks has been started an information campaign and is planning some related events to promote the edible garden, and planning is underway for the edible garden itself. So we're hoping to make it grow and become more successful as time goes by.
Yeah, that's been going on for a number of years, and I think, yeah, it gets better and better every year there too, yeah. Okay, to the motion, those. Sorry, Councilor Wardrop, anything to report?
Nothing to report.
Okay, thank you, yeah. Okay, to the motion, all those in favor? Carried. Moved by Councilor Nesbitt that the week of May 1st to the 7th, 2022 be hereby proclaimed as National Hospice Palliative Care Week in the city of Brooks. Amanda.
Through the chair to Mayor Petrie and council, the first full week of May marks National Hospice Palliative Care Week in Canada. National Hospice Palliative Care Week is a time to celebrate and share achievements of hospice palliative care throughout the nation. Together, let's celebrate the amazing care that hospice palliative care teams across Canada provide to our neighbors and families, empowering them to live in color, to embrace life's kaleidoscope of colors until the very end. Therefore, it is hereby requested that the week of May 1st through the 7th, 2022 be proclaimed as National Hospice Palliative Care Week in the city of Brooks.
Any questions? All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Councilor Idris that May 19th, 2022 be hereby proclaimed as Municipal Involvement Day in the city of Brooks. Amy.
Thank you. Through the chair to Mayor and Council. Each year, the city hosts Municipal Involvement Day for grade 6 students in our community. The purpose of this day is to familiarize students with local government, as this is part of their curriculum. Letters have been sent to the schools inviting students to submit an essay discussing why they'd like to be mayor or councilor for the day. The teachers review the essays and choose the 4 best from their school to submit to the mayor, and the mayor reviews the essays and chooses the 7 students who will become junior council. The students chosen are taken around the city to tour various city facilities, have lunch with Mayor Petrie and city staff, and then participate in a junior council meeting in the afternoon. Therefore, administration recommends that May 19th be hereby proclaimed as Municipal Involvement Day in the city of Brooks.
Any questions? I'm looking forward to this. I always find these students fascinating with the questions they come up with. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. This will be my first one as mayor there too. So, okay, to the motion, all those in favor? Carried. Moved by Councilor Goodenough that the week of May 2nd to the 8th, 2022 be hereby proclaimed as Mental Health Week in the city of Brooks. Lisa.
Thank you. Through the chair to Mayor and Council, the Canadian Mental Health Association will be marking the 71st annual Mental Health Week from May 2nd through May 8th. And this year, the focus will be to promote and encourage empathy and have Canadians #GetReal about how to help each other. One of the many special events that will be held in our region will be Brunch with Sean Mccann, which will help kick off Mental Health Week on Saturday, April 30th. Sean will be performing One Good Reason, a story of addiction, recovery, music, and love. Doors will open at 10 o'clock a.m., brunch will be served at 10:30, and the performance will begin at 11. The event is open to the entire community, but we're recommending an audience of 14 plus due to subject matter. And tickets can be purchased either through Eventbrite or through municipal offices and at the Steaming Cup and Lobster Mobster. And then there are a variety of other events and programs being held in the community during Mental Health Week.
In addition to the exciting event with Sean, the city has partnered with numerous local organizations such as Global Village, Grasslands Public Schools, Bassano FCFS, SPEC, Grasslands Regional FSS, and there'll be a lot of exciting other events such as an empathy walk with Grasslands, Pump It Up Run Barbecue, a Bassano Mental Health Barbecue. The city will also be hosting a Facebook Live event with a painting instruction with a local artist, as well as mental health Zoom workshops as well. So as the dates are finalized, we'll have absolute advertising, so stay tuned for that.
Okay, any questions? This has been going on for a long time. I think he was invited here, I don't know if it goes back a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago there too. So it's finally nice to see it finally, come up at the end of the month here too. So my compliments to the guys working on that committee there too. So
That's correct. It was originally going to be the Rural Mental Health Committee. Mr. McCann was going to be our keynote speaker. It was scheduled for April 2020, but it was, of course, canceled when COVID first happened. So now, 2 years later, we're making it happen.
Okay, good for you guys. Okay, to the motion, all those in favor? Carried. Moved by Councilor Jessica that the week of May 15th to the 21st, 2022 be hereby proclaimed as National Public Works Week in the city of Brooks. Amanda.
Through the chair to Mayor Petrie and Council, on March the 12th, you did receive a letter from the Alberta chapter of the American Public Works Association regarding National Public Works Week beginning May 15th through May 21st. This year's theme for National Public Works Week is Ready and Resilient. Public works professionals are always ready to serve their communities and resilient as ever in their abilities to pick themselves up off the ground after encountering challenges. The Ready and Resilient theme highlights the ability of these professionals to perform regular public works duties and be ready at a moment's notice to react as first responders during natural disasters and overcome trials that are seen in the field. National Public Works Week is observed each year during the third full week of May, and this year marks the 62nd year that this event will be held. National Public Works Week calls attention to the many facets of modern civilization that grow out of the efforts put forth by public works professionals across North America who are dedicated to improving the quality of life for present and future generations. Therefore, the Alberta chapter of the American Public Works Association hereby requests the week of May 15th through the 21st, 2022 be proclaimed as National Public Works Week in the city of Brooks.
Okay, any questions? Okay, to the motion, all those in favor? Carried. Moved by Councilor Prentice that council will adopt the City of Brooks financial statements year ending December 31st, 2021. Shelley.
Thank you, through the chair to Mayor and Council. I'm very pleased to present the City of Brooks financial statements, and I do have a slideshow. Just have Bruce put it up for me. Thank you, Bruce. So as I said, I'm pleased to present the financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2021. You can move it ahead there, Bruce, thanks. So pursuant to Section 276 of the Municipal Government Act, municipalities are required to prepare annual financial statements in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. And those statements, along with the auditor's report, must be made available to the public prior to May 1st of the following year. The City of Brooks financial statements have been audited by KPMG LLP, and their audit report is included with the statements being presented today. In the auditor's opinion, the statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the City of Brooks as at December 31st, 2021, and the results of its operations, changes in net financial assets and its cash flow, and for the year ended in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. Next slide, please. So municipal financial statements are a little bit intimidating, and they contain an overwhelming amount of information. So for the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to try and simplify things a little bit and just talk about the two primary statements, which are the statement of financial position and the statement of operations. I've got a little green thing that I'm going to use here. So these two statements here, within the financial statements, the statement of financial position is supported by several notes to the financial statements, and the statement of operation is supported by schedules. As well, there's two other additional statements within the consolidated statements. So the first statement that we'll talk about is the statement of financial position. And this statement really presents the financial position of the municipality and indicates the overall financial health. So you can change it to the next slide. Thanks. So an important financial indicator within the statement is net financial assets or net financial liabilities. So in our case, in the City of Brooks case, we are in a net asset position. And that really means that our financial assets, which are assets that are easily liquidated, are greater than our financial liabilities. And of course, financial liabilities are monetary obligations that the city currently has. So the net financial assets represent the city's ability to sufficiently fund our municipal operations and our services. As illustrated, our net financial assets grew by just over $707,000 in 2021. So this is just a little visual of what it's done over the past several years. Next, please. So let's look at what happened in the year which affected our financial assets and liabilities. So first, the city's cash and short-term investments increased by over $836,000. One significant event that affected that cash flow was receiving our 2019, 2020, and 2021 allocations for federal gas tax, which is now known as Canada Community Building Fund. I'm not sure I'll ever get used to that new name, but so as only a small amount of this grant was used in 2021, the payment that we receive also increased our deferred revenues, and that is listed under liabilities. And that would reduce our net financial assets, but that's just because we received the grant, but we have yet to use it. So the second thing that happened was the city had secured a grant from the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, or ISIP, to provide some of the funding for the Hort Main Connector Line project. So just over $1.29 million was receivable at the end of 2021. As well, approximately $763,000 of MSI funding was also receivable for the same project. And this accounts for our increase in receivables. So those two things increased our net financial assets. And I like to also mention, each time I present these statements, the repayment of our debt. In this case, our long-term debt decreasing. And that's because we repaid about $518,000 of our long-term debt, and we had no new debt issues. So that too increased our net financial assets. So the statement of financial position also illustrates the value of the city's non-financial assets. These are assets that are used for the purpose of delivering services, and they include tangible capital assets, inventories for consumption, and prepaid expenses. In 2021, the city invested just over $8.5 million towards capital projects, including our regular vehicle and equipment replacement programs. The major projects for the year were our street improvements projects, which are annual, but this year they totaled $1.5 million in capital, and there was some expenses that were considered operating, but as far as our non-financial assets, that's how much they increased. The A to Z storm projects, 1.8 million. The completion of the CCC building window replacements for 56,000. The continuation of the Hort Main Connector Line project. So this project is still a work in progress. However, a lot of it was done in 2021, about $3.9 million worth of expenditures. The Sunny Lee and Meadowbrook lift stations both began in 2021, and together they are work in progress now. Together, we spent $93,000 in that year. The commencement of the BrooksNet project, or our broadband, which is also work in progress as it just started. We spent $157,000. We also had construction of pop-up patios for use in the downtown area of $45,000, replacement of the city's backhoe for $183,000, and replacement of one of the city's ice resurfacers for $167,000. So next slide, please. So as mentioned previously, the city invested $8.5 million in capital assets. The amortization of those assets, and that's the value of the assets that we used up in the year, was $6.8 million. And we disposed of a few assets, a net book value of about $181,000. So as a result, our net book value of tangible capital value assets increased by just over $1.5 million in 2021 compared to 2020. So you can see that it's the first time in a few years that we've actually spent more or invested more in capital than our amortization, which draws down the net book value. So the next statement is the statement of operations. And this statement reports on revenues and expenses of the city, and it illustrates the results of our operations for the year. So if we look at revenues, on our statement, our revenues are reported by object, and this is just an illustration of the city's revenues totaling just under $33.2 million. And I just have a couple observations here. I can use my green thing, but I've put some stars by the ones that I will just make a comment on. Our net municipal taxes were lower in 2021, and this was due to the city reducing our municipal taxes to non-residential properties equal to the additional revenues that were collected in 2020 from our ICF agreements made between the County of Newell and the city. The second thing I noted here is typically in a typical year, net municipal taxes and user fees would be our two, the majority of the revenues that we collect. For the second year in a row, government transfers took second place. And this is a result of a couple of things. One, we did have a reduction in user fees collected due to facility closures in recreation. And we also had, as some of the grants I've already spoken of, an increase in government transfers. So in 2021, the grants used for the Hort Main Collector Project, ISIP and MSI, as well as the Municipal Sponsorship Program, or MSP grant, we used that grant for the A to Z storm project in 2021, and those were some of the main contributors to that increase. As well, I just noted in 2021, the city increased our Fortis and ATCO franchise fees to offset the absence of revenues generated by business licenses, so that you can see the increase here and the decrease in business licenses, and that's of course reflected in the statement. And finally, a couple of revenue shortfalls in 2021 include reduced investment income due to a continued reduction in interest rates and reduced penalties on taxes, which were due to a relief measure initiated by council during 2020. The further reduction of penalties on taxes reflects the full year in 2021. So when we made that relief measure, it was partway through the 2020 year, and 2021 represents the full year. Next slide, please. Thank you. So our Our expenses are the next part of the statement, and they're reported by function or department. And this is an illustration of the city's expenses for 2021, totaling just over 30.9 million. Some noteworthy changes here. Our recreation costs were down, mostly due to, again, some facility closures which persisted in 2021, as well as lower debenture interest due to the completion of the JBS Canada Centre expansion debenture in 2020. In transportation, we saw fewer snow removal costs due to decreased snowfall and lower storm flushing costs than in 2020. Expenses and protective services were slightly high due to additional RCMP contract costs in the final quarter to adjust for their current year's salaries and benefit increases. And in administration, our expenses were lower than 2021, mostly due to not having the property tax rebate that was given in 2020 for COVID or for relief from COVID, as well as higher staff vacancies in 2021. Expenses were higher in the water function, mostly due to high purchases of water due to increased consumption resulting from the hot summer. So this is our statement of operations. As I said, this statement is supported by schedules. And so I've just, if you can go to the next slide, Bruce, I've just done the same visual illustrating Schedule 3, and it lists the same expenses. However, they're expressed by object instead of department. So here we can see that salaries, wages, and benefits and our contracted services are lower than 2020, and both amortization of capital assets and materials, goods, supplies, and utilities are higher. So the last number on the statement, which I'll reference, is accumulated surplus. And accumulated surplus is really, it changes each year by the difference in our revenues and expenses. And this year, our accumulated surplus, yeah, you can, sorry, you can flip over. Thanks, Bruce. Our accumulated surplus increased by just under $2,259,000 in 2021. And that was the amount of revenues that exceeded our expenses. So accumulated surplus is made up of three amounts, and it is broken down in Note 13, but I'll just go through the three main categories of accumulated surplus. Equity in TCA, or equity in tangible capital assets, and this is equal to the net book value of our capital assets, less any long-term debt that has been used to acquire those assets. So this increased by just over $2 million, and if you can see, it's the exact same shape of our tangible capital asset visual. So it increased based on our capital asset additions, and it also increased a little bit because of the reduction in our capital debt, which was the pay down of our long-term debt. And that just all exceeded amortization of capital assets. So the second part of accumulated surplus, next slide please, is our reserves. So the city reserve balances increased by just under $496,000, and this is due to our contributions to reserves exceeding the amount of funding for projects that we've pulled from those reserves. A substantial contribution to reserves was the revenues collected for 2021 pursuant to the ICF agreements, which were negotiated between the County of Newell and the city in 2020. So we did move those revenues to reserve in 2021. The city also had an operating surplus regarding actual budget of $245,000, which I did bring to council a meeting or two ago, and explained how that surplus was being transferred to our reserves pursuant to our reserve policy. And the final part of accumulated surplus is our unrestricted net assets. And this is just the balance of accumulated surplus which has not been committed to reserve or invested in capital. And it decreased slightly by just under $268,000. And this stays pretty flat, mostly because we do move our surpluses to reserves, so most of it we commit to reserves. So just before I conclude my presentation, I wanted to say a little bit about, just remind everybody the surplus or deficit in regards to our budget versus actual, and the difference between that and our financial statements. So public sector financial statements are prepared on an accrual basis, and that kind of captures the true costs of the period, including those costs which don't involve cash. Amortization of capital assets is an example of a non-cash transaction. When we do our city's budget, we prepare it on a cash basis only, and it captures cash transactions in the period, and it allows us, and we do it that way because it allows us to establish the amount of money we need to raise in taxes. And as I reported earlier, in comparison to these financial statements, the city's budget surplus this year was $245,000. So, next slide. This concludes my presentation of the 2021 financial statements for the City of Brooks. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I will mention that staff's recommendation is that Council adopt the City of Brooks financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2021, and these two statements were presented to Audit Committee on April 11th, 2022, along with the audit findings report. Thank you.
Okay, any questions? Councillor Jessica.
Thanks, Shelley. That was very informative. Just curious on that tangible capital assets graph. It shows the nosedive from 2018 to 2020 and then starting to come back up. So is that because we're having more amortization over a period when we weren't doing any capital projects, or why did we have that big drop?
So through the chair to Councillor Jessica. So yeah, typically the years prior, our amortization was just higher than the capital asset investments. And this year is a good year. There were lots of capital projects that we finally got to. A lot of it was because we secured grants. And so now this is the first year in the last 4 or 5 that I compared it to that our capital investments were actually higher than our amortization.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you. I just kind of want to mention, we talked about this earlier, that this is last year there, but just maybe give council some dates on when we'll set the mill rate and when those projections will be coming out here, because that will be creeping up on us here pretty quick here too.
You bet. So through the chair to Mayor Petrie and the rest of council. So I am working on the tax rate bylaw, and I'll be bringing some information in regards to how we have in the past split our tax rates between commercial and non-commercial, or non-residential, sorry, residential and commercial properties. Also, basically any changes in our budget that we want to look at and what our recommendation is for the revenue that we pull. So I'll be doing that within probably next week, and we'd like to be bringing that tax rate bylaw to council by May 2nd if we can. If there are some changes or further discussion that delay that, then we'd like to pass that bylaw by the second council meeting, which is May 16th. Typically, we send our tax notices out probably around the 18th or 20th of May. We do have a bylaw that says our due date is on June 30th, and we are required to give 30 days. I like to give 45 days, and I'd like to have it at the same time each year so people can expect it at that time. Hopefully that answers.
Okay, that's perfect. Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Idris.
So does that include some options around with the changes of the RCMP and all of that? Are we going to have some options that could change what we were talking about before?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Idris. Yes, I'll bring options and a recommendation, based on the information that we have.
Okay, to the motion there, moved by Councillor Prentice that council adopt the City of Brooks financial statements year ending December 31st, 2021. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, moved by Councillor Wardrop that the April 2022 financial variance report be accepted as information. Shelley?
I can assure you this will be much shorter. Thank you through the chair to mayor and council. So I have attached the finance variance report, which finds the city approximately 28% through the 2022 year. As illustrated in the report, both revenues collected and operational expenses seem to be right on track at this time. I have noted other variances in earlier variance reports, but have nothing new to say since my last report. And that includes I don't have any variances to report on for capital projects either. And therefore, I just recommend that the report be accepted as information, but happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions on that? Okay, to the motion, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, now a discussion on the old rodeo grounds. I guess, Alicia, you're up here.
Thank you. Through the chair to mayor and council. A request for proposal was posted by the city to look for potential developers to propose a mixed-use housing development. Unfortunately, the city didn't receive any proposals which met the intent of the RFP. Council then directed staff to engage the public and determine what the citizens of Brooks would like to see at the old rodeo grounds. In council committee on August 24th, 2021, staff provided council with the results of the public engagement done on the old rodeo ground property, and we've attached a copy of the engagement summary to this report. Based on the results of the engagement survey and discussions with council, staff had put together possible development scenarios for the old rodeo grounds. The scenarios were presented to council on November 9th of 2021, and council had then directed staff to look at possible locations for a new public workshop. Staff has looked at several options that would allow the public workshop to remain at its current location. Therefore, staff has put together several options for redevelopment of the old rodeo grounds. Given the results of the public engagement, staff has the following suggestions for consideration. One being leave the area as is and continue to use it as an off-leash dog park. Two, we could fence a portion of the old rodeo grounds for use as an off-leash dog park while utilizing the additional space for the BMX bike park. And then three, kind of an extension of two, but should the city determine that the existing skateboard park need a complete replacement, the old rodeo grounds could be utilized for a new skateboard park as well as the BMX bike park and the off-leash dog park. Due to council recently providing funds towards a soccer field at the new Francophone school, staff has not incorporated a soccer field as was mentioned in the past options. All of the above options would allow the continued use of the horseshoe pits at the northwest corner of the site. With the site being used as a recreational area, a sidewalk would need to be included along the east side of 7th Street East from 2nd Avenue East, south, and across the frontage of the property. We will need to look at purchasing property from the golf course because there isn't sufficient road width, to incorporate a sidewalk along 7th Street East. And therefore, staff is recommending that council proceed with option 3. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, any questions? Councillor Goodenough.
You're looking at me like I have some questions. I think this is a great idea. I like the options that you've placed there. And I'm just curious, though, with the golf course, my understanding was that, is the golf course not owned by the city? Like, it's a private company on its own? Okay. All right. I was just curious on that. But okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Any other questions? Oh, Councillor Wardrop.
Thank you. Yeah, a couple questions and a comment.
Turn up your
The
volume
first
just a little bit.
Oh,
okay. Bruce is going to turn you up there.
okay.
Okay, we can hear you.
Is that better?
Yeah.
So a couple questions. First of all, I'm really glad to see that that we're just proceeding with the entire space being for recreation. That being said, there was a lot of options that I didn't kind of see reflected in the three options. In the public survey too, there were lots of things like spray parks, basketball courts, maybe like an outdoor pool, sheltered picnic areas, like a space for special events. I mentioned something like a larger community garden. Anyway, more, I guess, like exciting activities that could take place there. While the BMX park and the dog park are obviously really popular, especially the dog park. I think we've all, it's pretty unanimous that we want the off-leash dog park there. I would like to see more options about what the potential layouts could be. Like before in the fall, when you presented us with different options, you had the layouts there. And I think that could be helpful now that we know for sure that that the public works building doesn't sound like it's going there. So that leaves a lot more flexibility for the space. The other thing was the horseshoe pits. I don't think we need those. We could probably use that space in a more constructive way. I don't know that they get used, and maybe somebody else can correct me if I'm wrong there, but I don't think those are well utilized.
I'm just going to kind of respond there. I like the idea of the BMX park because those guys have been working on that for a while. The dog park, and basically now we'll give administration some direction on that. So that's sort of what I call 2 of 3 parts in there. But that does leave sort of a third part open for maybe future development down the road, like what you're talking about. And maybe we don't have to do everything all at once. But I think it's important that we go ahead with the BMX park and the dog park, and then we can kind of, if I envision this right, I sort of cut it into thirds. The dog park is 1/3, but I'll let administration decide on how much is a dog park. I don't have a dog, whatever, so I don't know how much room you need. But the BMX stuff, I've seen ones around the province there, and I know they do take up a lot of space on that one. But would you be quite content just to leave the 1/3 open there, and then as we sort of move on, maybe there are other ideas that come, can come forward on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, the other question I had was how much space does the BMX park actually take up? Would it be 1/3 of the space?
Alicia, go ahead. I've seen the one in Medicine Hat, but I can't judge, like if it's taken up, how many square meters or,
Yeah, thank you through the chair to Councillor Wardrop. I don't think that at this time we know an exact figure of how much space. One of the things that the group that's working toward this has been struggling with is actually getting a location first, because they do and they have been trying to apply for grants to have it designed, but without the location, it's very challenging to design it. So I don't have a set amount of area that they require for it at this point.
That kind of leads me, sorry, I have lots of questions. That kind of leads me to my other question, there's a kind of a committee, like a separate organization that is kind of taking this on, or what role do we play in that, or would we be spearheading that in place of this other organization?
Yeah, and maybe administration can correct me if I'm wrong. The way I see that is they would look after fundraising and develop the park to their liking. We would give them the land and the place to do that, and that they would develop it on their own on that.
And then we would
maintain
maintain
have
it?
to do some fundraising, and somebody can kind of correct me if I'm wrong on that there, yeah. Okay, Councillor Nesbitt?
Yes, Your Honor. I just wanted to mention that the horseshoe pits have been refurbished, and there's a full set of horseshoes out there. And if we do get next year's summer games, we will need horseshoe pits, and I believe those are the only ones around. And if we don't get next year's summer games, we applied for the following 3 years later to do it then. So those horseshoe pits would have to stay there, and they're in pretty good shape. Granted, there's not as many people playing as it used to be, but it's still being utilized.
Okay, Councilor Idris?
Thank you for the proposal. My concern is that we have already created some sort of a hype around what are we going to do with this rodeo ground. There is a lot of talks, there is a lot of ideas and things like that, and I'm with Marissa in the idea that this leaves a lot for excitement and for vision. So if we want to go with the idea of phases, maybe we do need to create that and say that this is the first phase, this is the second phase, this is the third phase that will have these big things that we were talking about. This here doesn't get me excited. That.
Okay, well, we can call this the first phase, and the second phase would be the one I talked about where we look down the road. I don't know what your third phase would be. Just joking. Go ahead.
That there could be a lot that could be planned into this, and maybe and even strategically thinking about it, you need to decide where things will be. Otherwise, when you start thinking about the second phase, you are going to say, you know what, maybe it should have been better if it was in another area or separate. If that makes sense.
Okay. I also see, I know what you're talking about, the third phase, whatever, but I don't know if we actually have any concrete, if we knew exactly what the concrete project would be there, and then I know what you're saying. I wanted to make sure that we had the dog park in place there in the BMX, because those guys are looking for a location, and I wanted to kind of get that out of the way there. So, Councillor Prentice.
Yeah, I like the thing you're looking at here, but, you know, I've never considered anything else other than that rodeo grounds, excuse me, for a dog park, and we did talk about a couple areas in industrial park with no consideration whatsoever, that I think it should be talked about even to the dog people or whatever. It may be a better option with 3 acres over there for the future. And then also your BMX track is great. The skateboard park, the proper location for it is where it's at, except it's on the truck route. You're gonna have to build sidewalks and everything down to that rodeo grounds for that. Where it's at, the location is good because it's good to the schools close there. It's lots of room, so they really don't need much for parking. So I think there should be a little more research done on all this before we start throwing what we're going to do down there and make sure we get it right. But I'm still thinking we should be looking a little farther at dog parks and stuff, but it just seems like it's dog park and that's it.
Okay, Councillor Nesbitt?
I just want to clarify that I meant the seniors' summer games, not the general summer games, so that's you and me, Your Honor.
Okay. Any other questions, Councillor? Good enough.
Just a few comments. As spring is and summer is coming, actually all year that park is used quite well, the dog park. You can go online now and there are different websites for tourism on dog parks, actually, that attract people from all over Alberta. And there's different rating scales. And I just don't see this as a part of the dog park as just a part of for the residents of Brooks, but this is actually something when people are camping, people are traveling through, they bring their pets. Pets are a major part of the family. This is I think a great opportunity. I also think that I agree with what you're saying, Councillor Prentice, on we need to open this up more. I'd like to see where we're going to some proposals with the Kinsman building and what we would do with that, because that could be a major part of a family center. And what I mean by that is, you know, we've got an amazing park. We're building an amazing park, at Kimbrook Island, the provincial park there, where we could be using that as a you know, family weekend rental place. Now, my understanding is that Kinsman still manages it, and maybe they'll continue to manage it as we look at that. So I think that's an important integral part, using that facility for the long-term use of that park. The bike park, or the bike park side of it, the BMX track, that's a growing sport and it's cheap. And I think one of the things that's important to remember, I would still like to see a soccer field there. I know we're putting one out on the other side, but I just think you've got the bandstands there. There's an opportunity. And my question, I guess, or my question back to administration would be, would this go back to Parks and Rec to build up a plan? Because where does it fall, I guess?
Okay, Alan?
Through the chair to councillor, good enough. I believe that this would be council because there is some Parks and Rec in there that, you know, talk a little bit of council too and other things. Certainly, you know, we don't know exactly the direction that council wants yet from the conversation. There is a lot of other aspects that can go in there for sure. You know, maybe what we could do is come back with, let's say if we want the BMX park there, try to figure out about how much land that would take. You know, if the dog park goes there, how much land would we use for that? And if we do have to put, say, the skateboard park, and how much land is there, and have a look at that and see what land there is remaining there. And then we could come back with more options. If those are the three things that you want to for sure consider there.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Wardrop?
I also would like to kind of get some clarification about the planning and the fundraising from the BMX organization there. I like from what my understanding is they've been at this for a while, and I'm not really sure what progress they've been able to make. So that's a bit of a concern of mine. Like if, you know, we set aside so much space and there could be interruptions or, yeah, I guess I just to seek some clarification from that organization of people about kind of where they're at and if they think that that their fundraising hopes are viable at this point, and then what we would have to do to fill in the gaps there.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Okay, Council, good enough.
Sorry, just how many acres of land was that again? 22,
23, isn't it? 23.2? Yeah, 23.7, yeah, or something like that, yeah. Okay, where do we go from here then? Alan?
Through the chair to mayor and council. So we could start with those ideas. We can also talk to the organizer of the BMX and maybe even have them come back and do a presentation to council again. When we talk to him, we can get an indication of size, but he can reintroduce. He spoke to the previous council actually, so yeah, you guys didn't get the opportunity to hear that.
Does that work for your Councillor Wardrop?
I think so, yeah. If I could make a suggestion, kind of along the lines of like the phasing in. So if we could, like maybe it might be easier to decide, like first things first, like if we want the dog park there for sure, what could that look like in terms of space allocation? And then we can approve that one piece and then we could move on to like that phase two, see what we're gonna put in that larger, maybe third, and then we can reserve the rest of the space for something else. I would just like to see something, we all do want to see something concrete, I guess, as we're all excited about this space.
So you're looking for a schematic plan or something, right? Like on the dog park would be
yeah, I kind of
meters. The BMX track would be so many meters, and the third section, whatever. Yeah, and
yeah, I think so. I'd like to see it like visualized a little bit, and then you know, because if we can get at least one portion of that down right away, then we can. Because I agree, we're not going to do everything all at once. It's going to be a phased process. So if we could kind of have that first visual of how much space that first piece is going to take up, then we can look into the BMX and then we can look into the rest of the space and then the Kinsman building. But I would like to see it more visually presented if possible too.
okay, Councillor, good enough.
I'd also put out a recommendation that maybe we get a price on the sidewalk. That would probably be, and the purchase of the land if they're interested in even selling part of the golf course there, or that area that I guess would be off of street that we would need to purchase. So that would probably be, what's that gonna look like? I know that doesn't inhibit the dog side of things, but just a point of clarification too, then option one was at this point, or one of the suggestions to consider was leave the area as is and continue to allow the use of the off-leash dog park. So for the next foreseeable future, I think we should be able to give some assurance to the dog owners that it's a continued use space, right? And I think that's an important part of the motion or the recommendation going forward.
Okay, going back to Councilor Prentice, he suggested that maybe we look at other options. Do we look at other options on that? Councilor Prentice?
Well, I think we should take a look at it, whether we do anything or not, but we have that land there.
Yeah.
Until you come up with a plan of what you're gonna do with that whole rodeo grounds, you can't do anything. I mean, we talked about everything, everybody wants everything, but let's get a plan and see where we're at. It's gonna take a couple of years, excuse me, it's gonna take a couple of years to get this done anyway, so. No use getting too far ahead and then end up in a mess when we're finished, so.
Okay, Councilor Nesbitt?
I was just gonna reiterate what Councilor Prentice just said, and don't forget, we do have a dog park across the tracks as well that we're not utilizing at this time. So it's just kind of, we're using this one just for the time being, I always thought. So I'd hate for a dog park to stop any progression that we have for the rodeo grounds when we already have one.
Councilor Jessica?
I was thinking the same thing or similar. One of the comments made in here was that it's too valuable a piece of property to be used as a dog park. And I do have a dog, and I was actually there this morning with my dog. So anytime we've been there, it hasn't really been that busy. So how busy is it? How much land is needed for this dog park? Again, down the road, do we want to spend a bunch of money prepping it as a dog park if down the road we're going to find a human-related purpose of it for it that has more value, and then not wind up having to move it. And from what I'd heard, the previous council had actually narrowed it down to at least one other possible location, which might be bigger and more suitable for that particular purpose. So yeah, I think it needs a little bit more investigation.
Okay, so from what I'm hearing, and I go back to what Councilor Idris said, is you're looking at almost, and what Councilor Prentice talks about is a plan, whether it be phase 3, but a plan for the whole project to have a plan. We don't have to do it right away, but to have a plan where maybe we do it in stages. Is that what you're talking about, Councilor Prentice there? Like to come up with a plan for the whole works.
I think you gotta have a concept plan.
Yeah.
Right now, we
Yeah.
was talking about, so if you don't bring some plans in,
Yeah.
what can happen, you can't build anything anyway, so it's being used the way it is now, so you got a whole year more to work on it, so get the thing put together and then work from there.
Yeah, okay, Councilor Idris.
Can I make one more comment? Sorry.
I support that.
Yeah, okay, so.
Sorry, one more thing.
Alan, yeah.
Sorry.
Administration can work on a concept plan, but you have to tell us what you want in there before we can work on it.
Okay, Councilor Woodruff.
One more thing, yeah, to the, I hear the comments about perhaps another space for the off-leash dog park. I think that's valid as long as we find a space like in town, because I think that's the big draw and that's what people want, is a place. You don't have to go across the tracks, you know, they don't have to drive there. It's within walking distance within the city limits. If there's a location, a viable location in town somewhere, and I know we kind of just threw around the idea of maybe that the field kind of in the Walmart area, something there's big enough space and it's really easily accessible to people. I'd be like open to hearing about something like that, but I don't know about outside of town. Because I agree that makes a total difference for the use of the space, right? Because that's going to be a big chunk of the land there. So if administration can come up with a solution that would put the dog park within the city limits, then that could be workable too.
Okay, so just to conclude, we send it back to administration to come up with a concept, and getting back to what Alan says, they need some concrete ideas on what we want, sort of what I call it the third phase or the third part, whatever, but, so do we bring this back to council committee down the road here then to take it back to administration? Because we want to find out some answers on how much the BMX people will need, you know, whether we keep the dog park there, what we're going to do with the third part there to, you know, like, you know, whether we bring in down the road a skateboard park, whether that be, you know, 5 years down the road, 6 years down the road, or something like that. Is that what we're all looking for then? I think I got the feeling on, yeah, okay. Does that help you at all? Or is that even more confusing?
Thank you through the chair to Mayor Petrie. I think we do. I can work with Dwayne Perkins. I know he's been working on the BMX park and find out what kind of area they would be looking at. And then I guess if we have some kind of direction from council on what they feel would be good for the dog park, and then we could put it together locations on the site and see what land is left and bring that back to council.
Okay, yeah, council, good enough.
Should we appoint someone from council to be a part of that? And, yeah, or just wait?
Yeah, I don't know. I think let's administration do their work there on that.
Okay.
Yeah. Otherwise,
Yeah.
we get too much sort of political influence on it then. On that.
Well, politically, they're asking us to do something.
No, and I know, but yeah,
I know what you're saying.
I know what you're saying.
Though one of the things, though, we're still waiting for a report back on that skateboard park. So that could be sooner than later, my understanding would be, with the concerns of that. And I don't know if we've got anything back yet. We do, okay. Well, we'll wait to hear. And then, because that could be a development in the process sooner than later, but thank you.
Okay, so I think I got a general consensus that we're going to send this back to administration, and we'll discuss it down the road sometime there. Yeah. Just a point.
Somebody to make the motion to, sorry, we would need somebody to make a motion to refer it to committee.
Yeah, Councillor Idris, yeah. Councillor Idris moves that we send the referral back to council committee there. Okay, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, moved by Councillor Jessica that Madonna Tennell be appointed to the BRZ Board effective March 1st, 2022 and ending March 1st, 2023. That's Amy.
Thank you through the chair to mayor and council. Annually, as required by bylaw, the BRZ is required to provide a list of new members of the BRZ board for council consideration. At the March 7th council meeting, council appointed the BRZ board of directors. However, we were contacted by the BRZ president and were advised that they would like to appoint Madonna Tennell as an additional director. Therefore, administration is recommending that Madonna Tennell is appointed to the BRZ board effective March 1st, 2022, ending March 1st, 2023.
Okay, any questions? All those in favor? Carried. Okay. And this is the chamber one, right? Okay. Okay, yeah, we got to, okay, talking about a chamber request here, and I'll start off with Alan here.
Thank you. Through the chair to mayor and council, on April 14th, a letter came in from the Chamber of Commerce requesting a decrease in their rental fees of our facilities for their 2022 trade show. In 2020, you know, when COVID hit, they did have a trade show. It was not very many vendors were there, and right now what they're seeing is the cost of the booths. It's still difficult for our businesses just coming out of recovery, and And their cost for the rental of the facilities is, including the curling rink, is just under $12,000. So they're requesting a decrease in those rental fees for this year's trade show.
Councillor Goodenough, if you want to comment on that, you're the chamber representative on that.
Trying to find my words. I'm lost for words for a moment. What would you like me to comment on? I'm sorry, like
Yeah.
to speak
no,
towards it, for it, or against it?
Yeah, or however you want. Yeah, no, and I think, I know during the pandemic, I think the chamber has struggled over time there. I just wanted to point out that, I mean, they've been doing the trade show in the community for probably over 30 years, and they've contributed a lot of money to the city in rental costs over the 30 years. And my feeling is I think we should help them, you know, especially during this time here. But I don't know how much, you know, like, that's the question I don't have, is how much do we help them? Yeah.
And that's a great question. My recommendation and my feeling, even sitting on that board, is that this maybe needs to go back to the chamber. The reason why I say that is we don't know how many vendors are registered at this point. They have, I think I wrote down here, there's, if we were just to give them the one, not the curling rink, but the other side there, there's 97 spots according to their map that they have. So they're looking for about 200 plus vendors they're expecting. So we don't know how many vendors. Are they renting the rink, the curling rink, and do they really need the curling rink? Maybe we need to scale back. So my proposal would be is that we put this back to them to ask them what they're asking for. The other thing too is we don't really know here, this year our vendors are struggling with costs. Well, are they going to pass on the cost savings to the vendors? And how much? Are they going to reduce the vendor rates? Like we don't, there's a lot of not misinformation, don't want to say that, lack of information, sorry, that we're receiving in this. So I have a hard time answering, but as part of the chamber board, I'm not on the executive, so I'm not privy at this point to that, but I would be more than happy. And I do appreciate the work that they do. Margaret's been working very hard on this, but we are coming out of a pandemic where a lot of businesses have now gone online for their customer base, and I don't know if they're going to be, if trade shows would be the thing right now. So, sorry.
Okay. Councillor Idris. And then, yeah. Sorry.
Similar to Councillor Goodenough, I would like to actually learn about, and when I was on the board of the chamber, this was the biggest revenue we had every year. So if they're asking for some discounts here, are they also bringing their revenue down, or are they still expecting that high revenue? So if they, I don't know. So basically, can they show us that their revenue is, they are also taking some loss, or is it only the city that's taking some loss?
Yeah, okay. Councillor Nesbitt.
Well, I was just going to say what everyone else had said there. I did the trade show 2 years in a row, and we had a budget set without knowing if the chamber is in financial difficulty. I'm kind of concerned of what their budget is, and if they have money to cover their budget, because if they don't, then, you know, I'd be more than willing to help them out, but without knowing their financial status, it's pretty hard to make a decision. So I agree with the other two councillors.
Okay. Do we have a motion here? Okay, Alan.
Through the chair to mayor and council, as we do not have a motion in front of us, I think what we can do here is just give administration direction to obtain further information and bring this back.
Okay, good, okay. Okay, moved by Councillor Goodenough that council deny the request to utilize the CCC garage space and advise Newell Integrated Child Care Society to find an alternative storage space. Amanda.
Through the chair to Mayor Petrie and council, on April 5th, you received a letter on April 5th, you received a letter that was received from Newell Integrated Child Care requesting the utilization of the Community Cultural Center, or the CCC garage, for additional storage. And attached for your perusal was a copy of that letter. Currently, the CCC garage is being utilized by the Facilities Department for cold storage to house items such as, but not limited to, toilets, urinals, excess lumber, facility filters, and spare door supplies. Please note that due to the new storage room build within the facilities building, the garage has been utilized more often as supplies were once stored in that space have now been moved over to the garage. Therefore, due to the loss of storage space at the facilities building, more items being stored in the garage, and the garage being utilized on a more consistent basis by staff, staff recommends that council deny the request to utilize the CCC garage space and advise the Newell Integrated Child Care Society to find an alternate storage space, for example, a C-can or a storage shed or so forth. So therefore, administration recommends that council deny the request to utilize the CCC garage space and advise the society to find an alternate garage space or storage space.
Okay, any questions on that? Councilor Woodrup?
Yeah, I have a question. I think it's unfortunate that that we would deny them. It's 16 families, I believe. It said in the letter that could be that could have daycare service, which is huge. Like 16 families having childcare is enormous, especially with the new childcare. Sorry, I'm messing up my words too. Subsidies, which would cut people's costs by about half, sometimes even more. So I would hesitate to deny them that. I guess I'm curious, how much would their organization be looking at if they had to find an alternate storage space? Because maybe that would be pretty crippling for them financially.
Okay, did you want to respond, Amanda? Yeah.
It's not that we would deny the 16 families any childcare. It's just that we do not have the storage space or the capacity for what they're asking to be utilized in that CCC garage space. However, SPEC does have a storage shed on the property of the CCC building. So that doesn't mean that the society could not, it doesn't mean that they would not be able to put a storage shed or a C-can on that property, because they are more than welcome to do so, to put those items in storage. But again, this is not the case of us denying any service for that society. It's just that we physically do not have the space in the CCC building to house the items that they're requesting us to house.
Okay, Alan. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, okay. Councilor Goodenough, did you have anything? Yeah.
No, I appreciate the clarification on that. Thank you.
Yeah, so we're not denying them. Yeah, all they have to do is find their own storage space is what I gather there. So, okay.
Yeah, no, and if that came off as like that we're directly responsible for denying people childcare, that's not what I meant. I'm just hoping that they can come up with a quick and reasonable solution, because childcare is such a needed service in the community, and if there's any way that we could help accommodate that, then I think we should.
Okay, very good. Okay, to the motion here. All those in favor? Okay, carried. Okay, moved by Councilor Wardrop that bylaw number 2209 being a bylaw of the City of Brooks in the province of Alberta to establish a process of sending assessment and taxation notices, assessment review board notices, and other notifications, documents, and information by electronic means be introduced and read a first time. Shelley.
Thank you. Through the chair to mayor and council. So at the April 4th, 2022 council meeting, administration brought forward bylaw 2209, recommending that the bylaw be advertised and that the passing of the bylaw be considered at the April 18th, 2022 council meeting. So bylaw 2209, as the introduction mentioned, authorizes the city to establish a process for sending assessment and taxation notices, assessment review board notices, other notifications, documents, and information by electronic means. So the city has recently gained the capability to email our combined assessment and property tax notices automatically through our financial software. The The process would require the taxpayer to create a MyBrooks online account using their roll number and their secure unique access code, which is provided to them on their assessment and tax notice. Once signed up, the taxpayer would have access to their account information and have the option to opt in to either having an email sent to them when their combined assessment and taxation notice is available on the web portal, or to have a PDF copy attached in the email. As it is required that the council give notice of the proposed bylaw in a manner that they consider is likely to bring the proposed bylaw to the attention of substantially all persons affected, the city advertised the intent to pass the bylaw in the April 13th edition of the Brooks Bulletin. In addition, the bylaw was made available on both the city's webpage and on several social media platforms. There were no responses to the advertisement from the public. Therefore, administration recommends that bylaw 2209 be given 3 readings and adopted.
Okay, to the motion, any questions? All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Councillor Nesbitt that bylaw 2209 be read a second time. All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Councillor Idris that bylaw 2209 be given 3 readings at this meeting, and it has to be carried unanimously. All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Councillor Wardrop that bylaw number 2209, being a bylaw of the City of Brooks in the province of Alberta to establish a process for sending assessment and taxation notices, assessment review board notices, and other notifications, documents, and information by electronic means be read a 3rd time and adopted. Any questions? All those in favor? Carried. Okay, Sandra, any questions?
Of course. Of course. Mayor Petrie, was there not a questionnaire asking residents where they wanted a dog park many, many years ago?
You know what, and maybe Lisa can help me out on this one here too. I don't know if, I thought we did a survey on what they wanted at the rodeo grounds. I can't ever remember a survey on where they wanted the dog park. I can't remember that, if you can recall that, yeah.
I believe Mayor Shields was mayor. Martin Shields was mayor.
Okay, that goes back a few years. Okay, yeah, Lisa.
I believe there was a survey done, and at the time they were considering a portion of Duke of Sutherland Park, amongst some other ones as well. But I don't remember if the old rodeo grounds was listed as an option at that time. But we could get that survey result.
The old rodeo grounds became, it was sort of an accidental dog park because it was a ball diamond and soccer fields and things like that. So when those ball diamonds moved out, people just automatically went over there, walked their dogs, and we said, well, let's make it a dog park. So it was an accidental dog park. It wasn't intended ever to be a dog park, but it grew that way. But go ahead, Sandra.
And you are right. Lisa, you are right. I remember that Duke of Sutherland was supposed to be, and that's where people wanted it. But that's okay. I'd still like those if I can get them. Councillor Goodenough mentioned the bandstand at the old rodeo grounds, but that's not included in this plan, correct?
Yeah, and you know, that was part of our strategic plan. I don't think I think when we talked about that, I don't know if that was, you know, specifically to go there. We talked about an outdoor sort of activity in the community, but it didn't have to go there. But maybe with this new plan, maybe that's part of the plan. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean bandstand. I meant just where they've got the seating capacity there.
Yeah.
I called it a bandstand.
Yeah,
I
think we know
apologies.
what you mean. Yeah, it's kind of like, yeah.
Rafter, what do you call it? Like grandstand.
Grandstand.
The grandstands, yeah, that's what I meant to say. My
Yeah.
apologies. Bleachers
Yeah.
that we used to block out all of the vehicles that were driving in there.
Right, and I'm assuming that if this got changed, those would be gone and there would be a fence there one day.
Okay, any other questions?
Yes, actually. So what is happening then with the Public Works building at this point?
Okay, Alan will answer that one there.
We don't have any plans for it right now, but Don has looked at the property where his current facility is and feels he can accommodate it there. So when that comes forward, that's probably where it would be expanded.
And Shelley can maybe clarify, is that part of, we want to make that part of our 10-year capital plan there too, right?
Yes, so currently, in the current 10-year capital
Yeah.
plan, it is in the plan, the design to happen this year and
Yeah.
construction next year or over the next couple of years. So it may be delayed, but we will be rewriting our 10-year capital plan and probably have some public consultation on that too. But that will definitely, I'm sure, show up as a project.
Yeah, okay. Sandra?
Yeah, and keeping with Shelley, since you're there on the mic, how much does the city have, or, sorry, how much does the city have to pay in debentures, and what is the city's debt limit that's remaining, please?
Well, I can.
There was a whole chart in that,
There's a schedule on the financial statements, which I have to refer to because I can't.
If it's in there, I can look.
Yeah, so it is note 11. It shows the city's debt limit is just over $41.5 million. Our current long-term debt is $4.2 million. Therefore, we have about $37.3 million of unused debt limit. It also talks about our debt servicing limit. So our debt servicing limit, based on the calculations that we use to calculate that, is $6.9 million. And our current debt servicing is about $705,000 per year. So we have unused debt servicing limit of $6.2 million per year.
So in pretty good shape.
Yeah, we're in very good shape when it comes to long-term debt.
And my last question, for Councillor Juska. You had mentioned the edible garden, but I know that there were some public meetings that were held. Is there going to be an update on those meetings at all? Is there going to be any more information that comes out to the public about the garden?
Yeah, they're working on signage to be put around the city and putting things on the internet. They just had 3 opportunities for people to phone in or Zoom in on for questions on the project. So yeah, there's going to be quite a bit of information out there.
So how many attended that?
Not a lot.
Whoops, thank you, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Sandra. Yeah. Okay, moved by Councillor Goodenough that council close the meeting to the public for agenda item 10A, lease as per section 24 FOIP at 6:17 PM. All those in favor?